Hi, my name's Daisy Corty and this is my evaluation for my documentary project. So I'm going to be going through the different scenes and just sort of briefly summarising what I think of it. The first thing I did was a short little sort of clip about me at the start with the voiceover, which I think really helped to set the scene of everything, so I didn't just start with the interviews and there's no sort of context with everything. I tried to use angles that I know would be typically sort of shown for a female, so like having very close-up shots of my lips and different features of my face rather than just having a straight direct shot like I have right now. Different lighting. I wanted to use sort of like Hollywood style lighting, which is like obviously what people would have used for women, just to kind of like mock myself in a way and like show that whilst I'm trying to get perspectives, I acknowledge that I've also maybe played into this myself. I did an interview with my dad, which I thought was important to get different ages rather than just focusing on my age range. So my dad's from the 70s, so his sort of era was more focused on like music videos and stuff like that. Like I think something really interesting I showed was the Girls on Film music video, which he talked about. These women were sort of shot not looking at the camera, just kind of like being an object. And I kind of wanted to, for every time I shot a man, I wanted to replicate that. So I decided to shoot him dead on and asked him not to look at the camera when he spoke, because I kind of wanted to have that sort of irony of, yes, you're talking about it, but when you're experiencing it, you find it a little bit different and kind of get that uncomfortability. I then decided to do this for a man who was born in the sort of 90s and then someone my age who was also a man. And I think what they said was really interesting because each one had very different but similar experiences seeing this in the media and like seeing like how whilst they didn't really acknowledge it at the time, when it's shown on them, so for instance Scott, who was born in the 90s, I sort of panned the camera up and down his body, sort of mimicking what a woman would do. And it was ironic because some of the films that he said which were like films that he saw which had been like stood out to him for the women in it were shot in this exact same way. So, and he didn't notice it on them, but because it's on him and the camera's physically moving, he found it quite interesting. And to capture this visually, I decided to do a reflexive documentary, which basically means it's sort of like incorporating the whole behind the scenes aspect of the documentary, showing how I actually made the documentary whilst in the documentary itself. So to do this, I used an iPhone camera behind the camera itself, which I think was quite important when it actually came to it, because it meant that you could see the uncomfortability not just from the lens, but also behind the camera, maybe him looking at me or just different things like that. So yeah, I also did the same thing for a man who was born in the 2000s, which was obviously similar to me because I'm born in 2008 and he was born about 2004, so it's not very different. And then the whole sort of thing to tie everything together was my friend who's the same age as me, but I basically wanted her to reclaim the lens in a way, and rather than filming her how I want to film her, let her film me how she wants to be filmed. Firstly, I filmed a short interview about, letting her see what the men said and her opinions on it, and then I wanted to let her take the lens back and basically flip the script, let her decide what she wants to shoot. And obviously it's hard because I'm not a man, so I wouldn't, necessarily have the best idea. I think that's something that obviously is a bit contradictory, but I do think that I have definitely done that in my own work, and I've shown that in the documentary, is how whilst I acknowledge that men do this, women also do it as well, whether or not that's because a man's done it and that's just the standard now. Either way, I have done it in my work, even if it's not on purpose. So yeah, I think my decision making has definitely gotten better, because I felt like before this I had many ideas, but I had to narrow them down. Like at the start I wanted to do it more like rather than having different age ranges, just have a man and a woman. And whilst this would have been good, I think you don't really get to see different generations because everything's about history, and if I'm just showing now, like, you don't get much context behind everything. I think something I would have done differently probably would be some things that I probably would have done differently was I found sometimes, like, I would struggle to be quite direct with what I was asking of. So obviously I would tell these men, oh, like, I'm going to be filming you this way, please do this. It's hard to say that to someone, which is kind of like proving my whole point is that obviously men or whoever is behind the camera is telling these women what to do. So I found it really hard myself to sort of flip the whole script and now be filming them, because typically you'd kind of see a man being a cameraman or whatever, or a director or things like that. These are typical sort of male fields. So this whole thing is very like ironic in a way, which is why I think the reflexive documentary goes so well. For the post-production process, I found this quite interesting because it meant that I was still controlling everything. Like, I'm still controlling the narrative, and I didn't really, like, I'm not asking every step of the way, is this okay? And it just really put in perspective for me, and I hope for the audience too, that everything is curated in a way for the audience. It's not, unbiased. I think the role I enjoyed the most was probably directing and sort of idea generation. So more like producing kind of stuff, because I really like creating the idea, and I love every aspect of it, to be honest, but I think my idea generations are really good, and I think my whole idea behind this, like having it reflexive, tying everything together, tying the actual making with like what I was filming really helped. So I think overall this project went really well, and I'm really happy with what I've done. Thank you.